There we are. So we are continuing on uh, with the second book, The Pilgrim Continues His Way. And he was just talking with a professor who knew a guru or a starets who had told him about the Gospels being the perfect teachers of contemplative prayer. And so he went through and listed all those verses that we all shared and went through with him. And so it continues on a little bit here tonight with the. I think it's still the professor speaking, the one who was taught by the starets, and it's titled the Skimnik, whatever that is. With such an evident token of special and miraculous mercy of God, and in view of your education, it would be unpardonable not only to give way to depression, but even to admit into your soul a shadow of doubt about God's protection and help. So this sounds actually like it's our pilgrim talking to the professor. Do you know what the God enlightened Chrysostom says about this? No one should be depressed, he teaches, and give the false impression that the precepts of the gospel are impossible or impracticable. God, who has predestined the salvation of man, has, of course, not laid commandments upon him with the intention of making him an offender because of their impracticability. No, but so that their holiness and the necessity of them for a virtuous life may be a blessing to us, as in this life, so in eternity. Of course, the regular, unswerving fulfillment of God's commandments is extraordinarily difficult for our fallen nature. Therefore, salvation is not easily attained. But that same word of God, which lays down the commandments, offers also the means not only for their fulfillment, but also comfort in the fulfilling of them. If this is hidden at first sight behind a veil of mystery, then that, of course, is in order to make us betake ourselves the more to humility and to bring us more easily into union with God by indicating direct recourse to him in prayer and petition for his fatherly help. It is there that the secret of salvation lies, and not in the reliance upon one's own effort. So there he's laying it out in that whole thing. It's if you see, the ego is what we're trying to kill, right? That's that part of us identified with body mind, and it's that part of us that's always trying to get credit and take credit for good things and whatnot, to build our self-esteem up, to build our sense of self up. And that is what makes us focus on self effort. It gets us thinking that I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do twice as much meditation tomorrow. And, that whole type A attack, alpha male, alpha female idea of we're going to make this happen. It's a very Western ideal, a very individualist ideal. And so if we spend our spiritual life doing that, we get discouraged, we get depressed, because we're not able to make the changes that we want to make. It seems like we can't even make recognizable changes, and it starts to weigh down on us. And then it colors the way we experience our practice, and so practice becomes a have to, or something that discourages us because we recognize, oh, I can't meditate, and oh my gosh, I can't still my mind, and oh my gosh, I'm having such awful thoughts, and on like that. And this couple of paragraphs that we just read is the solution to that. It's like you focus on the grace of the divine, you focus on working it out with the beloved. You're not in it alone, you're not expected to do it alone. This divine gift of God is what carries us through this. That for the Christians, they call it the Holy Spirit. For us, it's just that inner light, that awareness of returning to our natural state, which is holy and perfect. Be ye perfect, therefore, as your Father in heaven is perfect. It's again in the same vein as that prayer of pray without ceasing. It's a coming to realize that these things are already accomplished, that these things are already done for you, and that your practice at this point really is just to sit and appreciate them, bathe in that grace, in that love, in that knowledge that you've already won. You already know that Mother has rigged the game so that you get home. So it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. And that when can be right now, and even if you can't realize or don't realize you're realized at this moment, God can still be enjoyed. And our practice is about that. It's like a date. It's like going out on a date. Yes, you're going out on the date to get to know that person and this, that, and the other. And you've got all these insecurities about will they like you if they find out how horrible you really are, and all of that. But you enjoy the date, right? Hopefully, if it's a good date, you enjoy it. Well, with the divine, your practice time with the divine is a date. It's a going out with the Lord to become accustomed to that company, and to imbibe that love, and to imagine that grace, and to experiment with the promises that are given in the scriptures, and to build that relationship like you build that relationship with anyone else in the beginning. And that relationship deepens very quickly if you're earnest and sincere about it. But the point is to keep your eyes on God. Don't put your eyes on you and on your efforts and on your failures and how much time you're doing and how hard you're working or any of those things. Always keep your eyes on grace. Always. Because grace is the means of eliminating the ego's involvement in spiritual life. That if you keep it about your own work, then you can know that your ego is measuring. And it will always want to make sure that somebody notices that it's doing extra time. I caught this red hand. I caught my ego red-handed one day in the temple at Sanford in DC, Washington, D.C. I'd gone in there to do some meditation, some extra meditation, not part and parcel of one of my practice times. And I went in and I was sitting there and I was meditating, and I heard the back door open. I heard somebody enter the auditorium. And I couldn't help but notice how happy my ego was that somebody had accidentally caught me meditating in the shrine. Oh, this will be great. What a boon for me, So the ego's like that. The ego is always measuring things like that and always trying to build itself up. And if you give it any power, by ruminating or thinking about it, it's right there. It's always ready to take over. It's always ready to show you the way to get it done. But that's why we go to the Lord, go to the Divine Mother, and we lay at her feet and we enjoy her company, or the company of Thakur or Jesus or Buddha or all of them. Why not all of them? In the gospel, we have Buddha showing up for a meditation with Vivekananda. We have Jesus appearing in a meditation to Ramakrishna. We have all of the different sages appeared, and then Thakur himself saying, "He who was Rama and he who was Krishna is now Ramakrishna before you," and not in the Vedantic sense, he says. So that he was really, that's when that first idea was given to me about the fact that all the avatars are one. That Jesus came, Buddha came, Rama came, that it's been the same God incarnating every time, and that those messages were not discrete and separate, and they did not each belong to their own religion, but it was a flow of God in the world, and that all of those teachings are consistent and are beneficial for moving toward the goal of realization, of seeing our nature. And so keep your eyes on that. Keep your eyes on that. All right. So here, that last sentence. It is here in the thoughts of God that the secret of salvation lies, and not in the reliance upon one's own effort. The Pilgrim. How I should like, weak and feeble as I am, to get to know that secret, so that I might, to some extent, at least, put my slothful life right for the glory of the divine and my own salvation. I'm going to go close one of the doors here so I don't disturb anybody. Just a second. So the pilgrim is sitting. So I guess that was the starets. That was the Shkimanik, the enlightened man who was sitting there sharing that last bit. And so the pilgrim saying, "Hey, yeah, I would like that." But you see, this is also and I might be reading something into this, but the way that he says this, "Oh, how I should like, weak and feeble as I am, to get to know that secret." No. That's not the way we talk about these things. That what is that? We're just this talk of grace and this talk of the love of God, the talk of there, and here this humility by identifying with weakness. No, this is egoism. I'm going to say it here for this man. This is egoism when we take that false sense, or it might not even be a false sense, but we play up that sense of, oh, poor little weak me. I sure wish that I could do that. And wouldn't that be great if I could think of God that way? What is that? If you want it, stand up and be it. Declare it. Here forward, this is what I'm doing. I love that idea. That's a great idea. I shall now endeavor to be that way, to think that way. Not this kind of, half lost already semi-commitment. Poor weak little me. I should really like that. It'd be really great if that happened. No. You are the ever free, ever blissful. You are a man or a woman of the divine. And God is your power. And so if you say I'm weak, or you identify with inability, you're insulting God. Let's just put it flat out forward in unpopular terms. It's an insult. Stand up. Give your best effort. If you fall over, stand up again and don't mention it. Just get up and keep going. There's no sense in failure. There's no such thing as failure. Give your whole heart, and that's enough. Fall into the arms of God, and all will be well. The Shkimnik. The secret is known to you, dear brother, from your book, the Philokalia. It lies in that unceasing prayer of which you have made so resolute a study, and in which you have so zealously occupied yourself and found comfort. Right? So here we get the link that this constant prayer, your mantra, is the avenue to this kind of thinking. It's why the mantra has the name of God in it, because it's constantly putting your mind back on the divine, right? And putting your trust back on the divine, putting your hope back on the divine, putting your success back on the divine. So you don't get to hold any of it. You don't get to be responsible for any of it, because ultimately you'll give up even you, right? And if you is what's holding everything, then how are you going to give that up? So no. It is God. It is the divine in you that is bringing you home and teaching you and manifesting and showing you the face of the Lord. And so always bring yourself to that. And in your meditations, let them be a response to grace. Let them be a response to unconditioned love, right? They are not something to accomplish something else. It's your time with your lover, with your father, with your mother, with your beloved, as you like. The pilgrim. I fall at your feet, Reverend Father. For the love of God, let me hear something for my good from your lips about this saving mystery and about holy prayer, which I long to hear more about than anything else, and about which I love reading to get strength and comfort for my very sinful soul. Yeah, see this, Thakur would take issue with some of this. This is where the Vedic Christianity comes in, right? Because we do not identify with our fallen nature. We do not. Adam was perfect until the fall. So that is not his nature. His nature was perfection. His nature was unity with the divine in the Garden of Eden, which lies within your very own self. The Garden of Eden is within you. The tree of immortality is within you. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the birth point of the ego, lies within you. So all of this lies within you, right? And so we are reminding ourselves constantly, I'm ever free, ever pure, ever blissful. I've never been born. I will never die. I am by birthright an heir to everything. That we don't talk in this kind of way, and we don't get mealy mouthed about our fallen nature, about our sinful nature, and poor us for not being perfect. We are already made perfect, for the divine has made us perfect. Because the divine looks at us as enlightened beings. He sees the image of the beloved in us. We know that because that same story I always talk about, that untouchable that goes to visit Thakur, and Thakur bows down, falls down on his face. There was something to that. The reason that that whole event happened was to show you that that's what Mother sees when she looks at you. She sees you in your highest potential, in your purest form. And she would fall down at your feet and worship the divine that she witnesses in you. And it's just a delusion to think anything else of yourself. You are divine, a divine spark, a direct expression of God. And this will become apparent in time. That's what realization is. Final realization is like, wow. The Skimnik. I cannot satisfy your wish with my own thoughts on this exalted subject, because I have had but very little experience of it myself. But I have some fairly clearly written notes by a spiritual writer precisely on this subject. If the rest of those who are talking with us would like it, I will get it at once, and with your permission, I can read it to you all. Everyone. Yes, do be so kind, Reverend Father. Do not keep such saving knowledge from us. So that eagerness. It's cool. The secret of salvation, revealed by unceasing prayer. How is one saved? This godly question naturally arises in the mind of every Christian who realizes the injured and enfeebled nature of man. Thakur will have something to say about that too. But it's true that maybe our injured self can see, but this enfeebled nature, your nature is always victorious. Your nature cannot be defeated. It is the image of God. And what is left of its original urge towards truth and righteousness? Everyone who has even some degree of faith in immortality and recompense in the life to come is involuntarily faced by the thought, how am I to be saved? When he turns his eyes toward heaven. When he tries to find a solution of this problem, he inquires of the wise and the learned. Then, under their guidance, he reads edifying books by spiritual writers on this subject and sets himself unswervingly to follow out the truth and the rules he has heard and read. In all these instructions, he finds constantly put before him as necessary conditions of salvation, a devout life, and a heroic struggles with himself, which are to issue in decisive denial of self. This is to lead him on to the performance of good works, to constant fulfillment of God's laws, and thus witness to the unshakableness and firmness of his faith. Further, they preach to him that all these conditions of salvation must necessarily be fulfilled with the deepest humility and in combination with one another. For as all good works depend one upon another, so they should support one another, complete and encourage one another, just as the rays of the sun only reveal their strength and kindle a flame when they are focused through a glass on one point. Otherwise, he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. Yeah, so that when that crying out comes, that's the beginning, of course, when you start wondering, what is this? What is this? I'm not, certainly we can feel that inner conviction when we read about great men and when we live with great men and women and we can see our shortcomings. But those are just shortcomings. They aren't characteristics of us. They are not part and parcel of our nature. They're mistakes. They're things that we did in error without knowing better. They are the wrongdoing of a toddler, right? And so that faith and grace returns to us and holds us in that comfort so that we can keep going. If it wasn't for grace, there'd be no sense to keep going, because you failed. You've already failed. You've already made a debt that you can't pay, right? In that sense, because our expectation was to be perfect as God is perfect. And that would have been the 0 point. That would have been the expectation. That's what we were supposed to be. And then we didn't. So we messed up. And there's not a way to make that up. If we act perfect every day from here till we die, we're just doing what's expected. We're not gaining any ground. We're not earning any extra. We're just doing, again, the 0 point, what is expected of us. And so there is no way to make it up, to be better, in that sense, to cover your past. You can only deal with the moment. And in this moment, be perfect. In this moment, love. In this moment, be wise. In this moment, enjoy the company of God. And so to hold on to that. In addition to this, to implant in him the strongest conviction of the necessity of this complex and unified virtue, he hears the highest praise bestowed upon the beauty of virtue. He listens to censure of the baseness and misery of vice. All this is imprinted upon his mind by truthful promises, either of majestic rewards and happiness, or of tormenting punishment and misery in the life to come. This is a very juvenile level to be in, where you have to be frightened into acting right, or threatened into behaving yourself. It's completely removing. It's completely devoid of the fact that you are created in the image of God, which should be front and foremost in our minds. That this is what we are. This is our nature. And so, yes, we hear these highest praises, and we see this greatness around us, and we hear about the misery of virtue, but not in the sense that we need to be convinced of the misery of virtue so that we stop doing it. It's a matter of discerning to find the truth about vice and virtue. It's about discerning and understanding that virtue hurts because it's not you, because it's contrary to your nature. And so you drop it because of that, not because you're going to go to hell if you don't. You see, you can't, these things can't work that way. They get into some very disturbing mental problems when you think too deeply like that, when you lead your life by fear. Certainly there will never be any peace that passes understanding if you live a life of fear, right? So at some point, you have to change to love. Vivekananda says religion begins with fear, but he says religion always ends in love, right? And so that's where we want to get. All this is imprinted upon his mind by truthful promises, either of majestic rewards, meaning heaven probably, and happiness, or of tormenting punishment and misery in the life to come. Such is the special character of preaching in modern times. Guided in this way, one who ardently wishes for salvation sets off in all joy to carry out what he has learned and to apply to experience all that he has heard and read. But alas, even at the first step, he finds it impossible to achieve his purpose. He foresees and even finds out by trial that his damaged and enfeebled nature will have the upper hand of the convictions of his mind, and that his free will is bound, that his propensities are perverted, that his spiritual strength is but weakness, he naturally goes on to the thought, is there not to be found some kind of means which will enable him to fulfill that which the law of God requires of him, which Christian devotion demands, and which all those who have found salvation and holiness have carried out? As a result of this, and in order to reconcile in himself the demands of reason and conscience with the inadequacy of his strength to fulfill them, he applies once more to the preacher's self-salvation with the question, how am I to be saved? All right, well, it's going round and round in circles here, because you can't save yourself. And you have to have, and the beloved, my goodness, is there something else that God could do to convince you that he's got you, or she's got you? Is there something else that needs to be done? I mean, look at the life of Chaitanya, the love that he poured out in walking around the world, or the villages, singing of the love and grace of God. You know, look at the Buddha, who spoke only of compassion and sweetness and service. Look at Rama with his noble character and his compassion and his strength for helping the weak. You know, look at Krishna and his deep love for the gopis. Look at Jesus and his willingness to give up his life for your salvation, for your freedom. You know, is there nothing else? Is there anything else that God needs to do to say, look, get over this nonsense? There is love here. Love will win here. You know, so that gives you permission to go into the darkest space of your mind. Go into the part of you that you're most ashamed of and most afraid of. Go there and stand there boldly and say out loud within your inner world, love will win here. Love will win here. You know, those moments when you're feeling any of that deep depression, go into the depression, go into that dark place, embrace that dark place, and make the announcement, love will win here, because love will win here. This is what you are. It is impossible for it to end any other way than that way. So this walking around continually wondering how to be saved is just a lack of faith. It's a lack of faith. You by nature are saved. From the day of that first fall, God had every intention of bringing you back home again. You know, this is how the game goes on. This is how mother's play happened. That's why she put that darn tree in the middle of the garden, you know. Imagine that if she didn't have a plan for fixing that, if she put the tree there. That would have been quite an oversight. So she put the tree there, and you ate it. Now, whose fault is it? So you see, God is playing. This is the Leela. This is the play. And it's all God and God alone, having the time of her life, seemingly at your expense. But Thakur would give you that little wink and look at you and say, but who are you? Who are you indeed? How is this inability to carry out the conditions of salvation to be justified? And are those who have preached all this that he has learned themselves strong enough to carry it out unswervingly? Ask God, pray to God, pray for his help. That's it. Go to God, just hand it to him. It doesn't even have to be fancy. Just go and hand him the mess, right? Say, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to get out of here. Look at me. I can hardly make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without dropping something on the floor, and you want me to save my soul? You know, what is this? You know, lay yourself at the feet of the divine. You know, if we don't like the idea of God or that, which I doubt, I just sometimes don't know where everybody's at. It doesn't matter. Try it and see. You know, begin the mantra and see. Take up the Jesus prayer if you don't have a mantra of your own, and see. Experiment with it. Be open enough to go forward. And dare to forgive yourself. You know, God has forgiven you 1,000 times over. Now it's time for you to forgive yourself, for you to let go of being a bad person. Let go of being a weak person. Let go of being stupid. Be kind to yourself and give yourself that chance to stand up in the light of grace and to reach for God one more time. And if that one doesn't work, then you've got to give yourself permission one more time. Get up, reach for that light one more time, over and over and over and over again, until one day, bing, oh my God, thank goodness I didn't quit. So would it not have been more fruitful, the inquirer concludes, if I had, to begin with, and always and every circumstance, made a study of prayer as the power to fulfill all the Christian devotion demands, and by which salvation is attained? You see, all of this, it's being framed as a demand of God. And this is kind of the trouble with the way that modern Christianity presents this whole thing. This isn't a demand of God. It's the urging of your divine nature. It comes from within you. Your desire for freedom, your desire for love, your desire for forgiveness, for wholeness, for perfection, for every ideal is not because God has forced it on you or saying, look, you're over here and you need to be over here, get over here. All of that impetus for going higher is your own nature singing within you. And all of these things that sometimes in duality we put outside of ourselves, this encouragement of God, this strength of God, the grace of God, all of these are available from the inside out to you because of that image of God that is within you. The source of grace is in you. The source of strength is in you. The source of inspiration is in you. The source of love is in you. Where else do you need to go? The books can only remind you of what is in you. The sages can only point at what is in you. Great swamis and great accomplished spiritual people, can only point to the divine in you. Don't look anywhere else. You are that, ever free, ever pure, and ever beloved of God. So pray to that divine. Sit in the shrine of the heart. See the spirit that inhabits the temple of your body. Become familiar, become intimate with that spirit that inhabits this body, and find out that Tattvamasi. And so he goes on to the study of prayer. He reads, he meditates, he studies the teachings of those who have written on that subject. Truly, he finds in them many luminous thoughts, much deep knowledge, and words of great power. One reasons beautifully about the necessity of prayer. Another writes of its power, its beneficial effect of prayer as a duty, or of the fact that it calls for zeal, attention, warmth of heart, purity of mind, reconciliation with one's enemies, humility, contrition, and the rest of the necessary conditions of prayer. This necessary conditions of prayer. That's okay. There's a reason he's talking that way. You see, you can't enjoy prayer without all of those things, because your mind, your guilty conscience, if any of these things are there that are not there, if purity of mind is not there, if love for God is not there, if zeal's for not there, when you sit down to pray, when you sit down to do your practice, it's a trudge. It's like, oh God, is my time up yet? It's awful when you think of it in those terms. But when you think of the fact that God has promised to be with you in this moment, whether you deserve it or not, whether you can feel it or not, whether you can know it or not, whether you believe it or not, if you can just know God has said it through grace, through every mouth of every incarnation and every religion in the world today, he has told you, I am with you always. Do not be afraid. And so accept that. And when you sit, revel in it. Revel in it. That your mind may become pure. You'll stop holding on to the things that hurt you. right? It's not because it hurts God that you stop doing it. What does God care? God, God, God is so much bigger than your foibles, than your mistakes. You know, it's not a matter of for God in that sense. It's the matter of for your own divine nature, which is God. But it brings it down to the personal level. This isn't for someone else. This is for love. This is for wisdom. These are why we care, because this is what lies within us. And until we reach this perfection, we can't fully express ourselves. We'll never be able to sing loud enough. We'll never be able to dance hard enough or long enough. We'll never get enough flips into our gymnastic routine. It has to be on love. It has to be on God. He's the only thing perfect that we know. He's the only holder of ideals that we have. And so we look to that, and we find our courage in that, and we find our strength in that. Oh, but what is prayer in itself? How does one actually pray? A precise answer, which can be understood by everybody to these questions, primary and most urgent as they are, is very rarely to be found. And so the ardent inquirer about prayer is again left before a veil of mystery. As a result of his general reading, there is rooted in his memory an aspect of prayer which, although devout, is only external, and he arrives at the conclusion that prayer is going to church, crossing oneself, bowing, kneeling, reading psalms, canons, and acathists. Generally speaking, this is the view of prayer taken by those who do not know the writings of the Holy Fathers about inward prayer and the contemplative action. At length, the seeker comes across the book called Philokalia, in which 25 Holy Fathers have set forth in an understandable way the scientific knowledge of the truth and of the essence of prayer of the heart. This begins to draw aside the veil from before the secret of salvation and prayer, right? Drawing aside the veil is diminishing ego, diminishing that sense of self. And why does it diminish? Because love unifies. And love will break down the barriers of separation that have been established by your ego. Love unifies. And the way to build up that love is to accept it, to accept its expression from God. Right? How do you fall in love with your lover? By seeing their love for you, by seeing their kindness toward you, by seeing how much they care about you. So why should our relationship with God be different? We learn of God by letting him love us, by letting her forgive us, by taking her as our strength and finding that it works, that it's effective, by laying out our heart with all of its dirt, whatever is in there. We open it up, unafraid because of love, confident because of grace, and hopeful because of unconditioned love. You see, and this is why we practice. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're reading books and talking. He sees that truly to pray means to direct the thought and the memory without relaxing to the recollection of God, to walk in his divine presence, to awaken oneself to his love by thinking about him, and to link the name of God with one's breathing and the beating of one's heart. He is guided in all this by the invocation with the lips of the most holy name of Jesus Christ, or by saying the Jesus prayer at all times and in all places and during every occupation unceasingly. All right, that's a good little paragraph to read again. So we're guided in all this by the invocation of the lips with the most holy name of Jesus Christ, or by saying the Jesus prayer at all times and in all places and during every occupation unceasingly. Right? So what's he say just before that? That to truly pray, all right? So you want to know how to pray. This is how you truly pray. Direct your thought and memory without relaxing to the recollection of God. Always be aware of what is keeping your heart beating, of what is keeping you breathing, of what's keeping you alert. Where does your existence come from? Where does your love come from? Your ability to recognize love, to feel love, to act love. Where does that come from? Always remember the Lord. He is the root of everything beautiful in your life, the seed of everything profound, and the water of grace for growing in it. So always sit in that presence, to the recollection of God, to walk in his divine presence. Be active, that's why he says to walk and not to sit. Live in the presence. Always know. How do you do that? When you look up at the sun, remember what Eckhart Tolle says. I saw clearly that love and light were the same thing. So you walk outside and you are covered, bathed in love. What is that love? It's the presence of God. You didn't have to imagine it. Dum-dum. It's right there. All the light that you see is the manifestation of the love of God. Eckhart Tolle had that in his realization experience. You know, love and light are the same. So even in this moment, you know, what is it that makes me all orange and red right now? It's love. What allows us to see each other? It's love. What allows us to grow? It's love. So walk in his divine presence, to awaken himself to his love by thinking about him, thinking about the divine, you know, thinking about the life of Rama, the life of Buddha, the life of Krishna, the life of Sita, the life of Sri Sharada, you know, the life of Golok Ma, the life of Jesus. This is to think of God, you know, to become intimately aware of his stories that he has told you and lived for you in order to teach you. And to link the name of God with one's breathing, right? Link it so as you breathe in, you feel, ah, yes, the name of God. Ah, yes. So you're linking it to things that continue on rhythmically in your life, your heartbeat, the beating of one's own heart. So link the name to that. Link your mantra to your breathing and to your heart beating. I linked it to my feet walking, you know. So any of those things, just come up with means of never forgetting. Never forgetting. He is guided in all this by the invocation with the lips of the most holy name of Jesus Christ, by saying the Jesus prayer at all times, or your mantra, at all times and in all places and during every occupation, unceasingly. That's all. Unceasingly think of God. If you do this, everything else falls in place. If you do this, you will naturally become a kinder person. You'll naturally become compassionate. You'll naturally become self-controlled and disciplined. You'll naturally become truthful. Why? Because the momentum that this causes in moving toward God, you know, once you begin to uncover the mystery of divine love in yourself, you won't be able to get enough of it. You'll get so excited about it. You'll be pushing for more. Oh my God, what was that? I want more of that. Let's do it again. You can be like God. You can be like a dad with his little girl on the swing set at midnight because she won't let him stop pushing the swing. You know, that's how you'll be with your spiritual practice. You'll be like, no, just 10 more minutes. These luminous truths, by enlightening the mind of the seeker and by opening up before him the way to the study and achievement of prayer, help him to go on at once to put these wise teachings into practice. Nevertheless, when he makes his attempts, he is still not free from the difficulty until an experienced teacher shows him from the same book the whole truth. That is to say, that it is prayer which is incessant, which is the only effective means, alike for perfecting interior prayer and for the saving of the soul. All right, there you have it. It's the constantly remembering God that makes everything right. It's that awareness of awareness that combs the soul and takes the knots away, right? It's listening to the beautiful feeling of love in the heart when the name of God is mentioned. And it's sitting in the wonderful relief of knowing that divine forgiveness is a power, and to know that you are God's favorite, not to the diminishment of anyone else, because infinite love can have infinite favorites, and nobody will feel less than, right? So go on, be God's favorite. It is frequency of prayer which is the basis, which holds together the whole system of saving activity. As Simeon the New Theologian says, he who prays without ceasing unites all good in this one thing. Right? You can see that even the last prayer that Jesus prayed on earth was this prayer of unity. That we would all be bound to Jesus by love as he is bound to the Father in love. You know, that this constant recollection of God is what? It's the constant recollection of love. Never forgetting to be loving. Never forgetting that it's your only motivation for anything that you do, anything that you say, and anything that you think. And always, always be putting your eyes back on that love. And in doing so, you unite all good. You bring all good together by this practice of the remembrance of God's presence, always, unceasingly. So in order to set forth the truth of this revelation in all its fullness, the teacher develops it in the following way. For the salvation of the soul, first of all, true faith is necessary. That's right. True faith in this idea that there is an immortal relationship that you have forgotten with the divine. This faith in the things that you know to be true, which you could not know to be true any other way. The fact that you're immortal in a world that has no immortality. That you are perfect in a world that has no perfection. That you are the source of unconditioned love in a world that has never seen unconditioned love. This is the faith that must be there. That ideals do exist, even though we never find them in the world. It's the faith of knowing, yes, there is a perfect love. Yes, there is a perfect grace. Yes, there is a compassionate center to the universe. You know, knowing that, building your life on that, holding on to that truth. Holy Scripture says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. He who has not faith will be judged. But from the same Holy Scriptures, one can see that man cannot himself bring to birth in him faith, even as a grain of mustard seed. That faith does not come from us, since it is the gift of God. So it's even better. It doesn't come from us. So you can't sit there and be sorrowful because you can't get your faith together. Turn around and ask your mother, ask your beloved, hey, what about some of this faith that's necessary for me to even start? Let's get going. That faith is a spiritual gift. It is given by the Holy Spirit. That being so, what is to be done? How is one to reconcile man's need of faith with the impossibility of producing it from the human side? The way to do this is revealed in the same Holy Scriptures. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. Dummy. How did you think you were going to get it? How did you think? Ask and it will be given to you. The apostles could not of themselves arouse the perfection of faith within them, but they prayed to Jesus Christ, Lord, increase our faith. There you have an example of obtaining faith. It shows faith is attained by prayer. For the salvation of the soul, besides true faith, good works are also required. For faith, if it hath not works, is dead. For man is judged by his works and not by faith alone. If you will enter into life, keep the commandments. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness. Honor your father and mother. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And all these commandments are required to be kept together. For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offend on one point, he is guilty of all. So the Apostle James teaches, and the Apostle Paul, describing human weakness, says, by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified, which just means that you're not going to be able to do it because you're not focused enough, and you do have bad habits that are clouding your way of getting there. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. All right, we're going to lean on Takur here. Takur might give a little bit of a different turn to this. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. With the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. Right? That is, the body and mind naturally go down. Mother says, the mind naturally goes down, and the body also naturally goes down if you're identified with them. If you're going around, I'm the body, I'm the mind, then yes, all of this would be true, right? But the quickest way around this is to know that you are not the body and that you are not the mind, and to have your practice demonstrate that to you by the fact that you're watching the mind as you meditate, that you're watching the body as you sit there. And so they can be observed by you. If they can be observed by you, you are by necessity not them. You can watch them. So you are not of the nature of flesh. The flesh is of its own nature of flesh. So it goes down and the mind goes down, but you are of the nature of God. And that constant remembrance of God will be like the sun shining on the water that's running down and will cause it to be evaporated back up into the clouds, back up into the heights. So that sun of the divine is that which you must always think about, that you must always let shine within you, so that these spaces that do tend to go down toward the multiplicity, so that they can be stopped and inspired to fulfill their nature, to fulfill the nature of you. How are the required works of the law of God to be fulfilled when man is without strength and has no power to keep the commandments? This is true of the man and the woman that is deeply identified with body mind. That is true. But you can keep the commandments. You can. And you are strong enough within, because that image of God is all strength. Vivekananda says, we are all strength. We are all wisdom. We are all love. He has no possibility of doing this until he asks for it. Yes. So this is all coming from the divine. So yes, if your body identified, your ship still isn't sunk. If your mind identified, you're still not sunk. Whatever your condition is, go forward. Don't go backward. Whatever your condition is, think of God. Don't think about your condition. Whatever your shortcomings are, think of God. Don't think about your shortcomings. Yes, you made mistakes today. Yes, you made mistakes yesterday. But today and yesterday are no more. And so let those mistakes go with time. You're here and you're now. In this moment, be perfect. That's all it takes. In this moment, be aware of God. And any moment that you find that it's not true, change it. That's all. No big nothing necessary. Just get up, go again, relentlessly. Ye have not because you ask not. The apostle says is the cause. So if you don't have, it's because you're not asking. Or you forget to ask, or you forgot that you did ask. That's why constant remembrance is the predicate to this. And Jesus Christ himself says, without me, you can do nothing, right? You can do nothing because you'll forget. You'll be deluded right back into body mind. So hold on to spirit. Hold on to this And on the subject of doing it with him, he gives this teaching: abide in me, and I in you. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. These are fruits of the Spirit, that joy, kindness, compassion, love, caring. But to be in him means continually to feel his presence, right? So to be in Christ, or to be in Thakur, to be in Ma, to be in Spirit, is to be aware of that infiltrating presence that is all through, around, in, and of you. To always know that. Feel his presence, continually to pray in his name. If you shall ask me anything in my name, that I will do. Thus, the possibility of doing good works is reached by prayer itself. An example of this is seen in the Apostle Paul himself. 3 times he prayed for victory over the temptation, bowing the knee before God the Father, that he would give him strength in the inner man, and was at last bidden above all things to pray, and to pray continually about everything. And incidentally, God did not lift that temptation from Paul. Paul went to him 3 times to pray. He doesn't mention what the temptation is. And God, then after the 3rd time Paul prays, what does God say to him? Paul, my grace is enough for you. Move on. Quit focusing and obsessing over this one thing. My grace is enough. Let it go. All right. So we don't obsess by replaying your faults, even in a prayer. If you keep, all you're doing is reminding yourself of your faults over and over and over again. Drop the faults. Think of God. Think of God. That will be enough. A mind that's thinking of God will not be thinking of vice. A mind that's thinking of love will not be mastering hate. So think of God. Call on the name, that presence. That presence is not just a word. It's not just a name. It is the divine. Good Lord, it's the very universe itself. And that is being invoked at every sounding of that name within your heart, within your mind. And that is purifying. That is strengthening. From what has been said above, it follows that the whole salvation of man depends upon prayer, and therefore it is primary and necessary. For by it, faith is quickened, and through it, all good works are performed. In a word, with prayer, everything goes forward successfully. Without it, no act of Christian piety can be done. Right? Boy, it's a pretty strong case. Pretty strong case for prayer here. All right. So I'm just going to read through to the next page, and then we'll quit for the evening. In a word, with prayer, everything goes forward successfully. Without it, no act of Christian piety can be done. Thus, the condition that it should be offered unceasingly and always belongs exclusively to prayer. For the other Christian virtues, each of them has its own time. But in the case of prayer, uninterrupted, continuous action is commanded. Pray without ceasing. It is right and fitting to pray always, to pray everywhere. True prayer has its conditions. It should be offered with a pure mind, right? It shouldn't be a selfish prayer. Me and mine. The absence of me and mine is purity. So if you're going to offer it with a pure mind, it's a mind not set on selfishness. So it should be offered with a pure mind and a pure heart, with burning zeal, with close attention, with fear, which is respect, and reverence, and with the deepest humility. But what conscientious person would not admit that he is far from fulfilling those conditions that he offers his prayer more from necessity, more by constraint upon himself than by inclination and enjoyment or love of it? About this too, the Holy Scriptures said that it is not the power of man to keep his mind steadfast, to cleanse it from unseeming thoughts. For the thoughts of man are evil from his youth, and that God alone gives us another heart and a new spirit, for both to will and to do are of God. The Apostle Paul himself says, "My spirit, that is, my voice, prays, but my understanding is unfruitful. We know not what we should pray for as we ought. The same writer asserts, from this it follows that we in ourselves are unable to offer true prayer. We cannot in our prayers display its essential properties. So yes, so ask for it. Don't focus on the fact that you can't do it. Pray, ask for it, and be surprised at doing it. Be amazed at the freedom that you find. It is its own proof. All you have to do is take a chance. Take a chance, spend some time, and see what comes of it. But be paying attention so that you can see what comes of it, so that faith increases, that love increases, that grace increases, and you as a holy person increase. All right.